Two, three, one. Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Classic Album War. Today, as promised, we've got a special guest once again on the show. Please welcome Mr. Jeff Young on guitar. Jeff, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. What do you know? Hello, Pete Pardo.
Hello, Mr. Jeff Young. Guitarist extraordinaire. Thanks for coming back on the show. So today we've got a special show. We're kind of, we're doing a cool little album battle, but I think also more importantly, it's kind of a celebration of life of a guitar player, a musician, a singer, songwriter who's no longer with us, whose birthday was just the other day. And we want to kind of bring him back into the light here once again. So today we're going to talk about Tommy Bolin, and more importantly, two albums from 1976. We've got Tommy Bolin's Private Eyes solo album, the last album he would record before his death, going up against Jeff Beck's Wired. So also from 1976, ironically, the two albums that both guys were touring together in support of. So, but two pretty different albums. I mean, let's get that out of the way right off the bat, right? I mean, there's really no similarities between these albums whatsoever.
Well, Pete, let me just chime in here because I saw what you held up there. That's not an album.
Well, yeah.
These are albums. Okay. Let's get that out of the way. All right. These are albums.
All right, dude, where's the Wired album? Come on, you got to play nice here. Come on. So what we're going to do is Jeff is going to talk a bit about the Private Eyes album. All right, and then I'm going to kind of go on a little bit about Jeff Beck's Wired, and then we'll kind of discuss which ones we like better and why. But again, as always on this show, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of preference. This show is just an excuse to talk about two great albums, what we like about them, what we don't like about them, and in hopes that you all at home will go and re-listen to these albums once again. So as we get ready for the start here, Jeff, that's the first round. You're up. Tommy Bolin's Private Eyes. Go for it.
All right, people. Well, you got the right guy on this show for this episode, because you're talking to, for sure, one of the biggest Tommy Bolin fans out there on the planet. And I got the clipboard out. Look out. I got some intel, and I just want to say as a disclaimer going in that with all respect to the Jeff Beck aficionados in the listening audience, and I'm one myself, I love Jeff Beck. You know, when I told Pete last week, I saw that it was Tommy's the anniversary this past week, and I said, Pete, we got to do Tommy Bolin Private Eyes versus anything. And so he comes back a little mischievous. He comes back with the, all right, you got it.
And that's exactly how it went. Yeah, I was like,
Tommy Bolin Private Eyes versus Jeff Beck Wired. And I was like, Damie, why you do this to me, Damie?
Well, you know what? I was trying to think of like a perfect match, but then I was like, you know what? Why am I thinking of a perfect match? Why don't we do a match that actually, I mean, it's very true. They were both released almost at the same time. They were touring together in support of both albums. And yeah, stylistically speaking, there's really no similarities. I mean, one's a purely instrumental, like jazz fusion funk album. And the other one, you know, Tommy's album is like all over the place, you know, from a styles perspective. So, and it's a vocal album for the most part. So, you know, they're not really similar, but I mean, come on, there's enough in common there based on facts and history, right? So I figure why not? And Jeff was like, all right.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot more in common than probably most people are aware. And I'm going to shed a little light. And I just want to put this out there again. You know, I love Beck. I think part of the reason I was able to step into Chris Poland's shoes in Megadeth, he was a huge Jeff Beck aficionado. And you can hear a lot of stuff in Chris's playing that's very Beck influenced. They even covered I Ain't Superstitious on the Peace Sells But Who's Buying album.
That's true. Yep.
All right. But I'd never copped any of Jeff Beck's licks per se. So I was kind of mystified at the time, like, why? This is very easy for me to cop this stuff. And it wasn't until a few years later when I was browsing through one of my Guitar World magazines and a little article on Jeff Beck that I discovered why that might be. And I'm going to share the intel. I'm so glad I saved all those Guitar Player magazines from years gone by. I drug them all over the country, back and forth, you know, boxes and boxes of magazine. I knew they'd come in handy one day, Pete.
See that?
And today is that day. So let me first say, I'm going to read some text in Jeff Beck's own words. Okay. So don't shoot the messenger. Don't be mad at don't be miffed at the messenger. I'm just reporting the facts here. And this comes from none other than my buddy Carmine Appice. The first quote here. Are we ready for this, people? I'm afraid I'm going to leave a few Jeff Beck aficionados rocking back and forth in the corner today as they come to terms with this true reality here. Drummer Carmine Appice told that Tommy's playing on Billy Cobham's Spectrum LP inspired Jeff Beck, and he adopted that type of music. Jeff and Tommy jammed together, and Jeff Beck was only too happy to play bass because he wanted to soak up Tommy's lead guitar stylings. Of course, the Beck, Bogart, and Appice album. During this time, and this is now, I'm quoting Jeff Beck from Guitar World magazine, we would listen to Mahavishnu Orchestra and Billy Cobham's Spectrum. I love the jazz rock fusion vibes. Beck continues. Jeff Beck told Guitar World magazine, Billy Cobham's Spectrum album gave life to me at that time. It represented a whole new area that was as exciting as when I first heard Elvis Presley's Hound Dog. They were inspirational to me to the point that I started to adopt, some people might say bite, that type of music. Tommy's playing is fantastic. So just to put have you ever heard that, Pete?
I've heard.
I'm so glad I dug that out.
Well, I've heard and read many interviews with Jeff where he talks about how the Mahavishnu Orchestra he was really into that stuff, and John McLaughlin's playing. In fact, I think he hung out with John quite a bit around that time period. I don't recall him mentioning Billy Cobham's Spectrum, but that's not surprising because that was a really big album at that time, right?
Shedding light on
and you know, quite frankly, I think the Spectrum album sounds closer to what Jeff was doing on his solo albums, you know, Blow by Blow and Wired, than the Mahavishnu stuff, because that, you know, again, he brought in Jan Hammer obviously as a kind of link to McLaughlin's band, but I think like if you listen to the Spectrum album and you listen to Wired and Blow by Blow, yeah, there's a lot of similarities there, you know, I mean, style wise.
And I think even because I hear Jeff Beck, and before I had read that originally, because of course I knew about Beck before I discovered Tommy Bolin. I was lucky. I had a great guitar teacher. My first guitar teacher was a Tommy Bolin freak, and I had a roommate who was doing a Tommy Bolin tribute thing before tribute bands were hip. This was back in the 70s. And he would be downstairs rehearsing every Bolin song. So I know all this stuff frontwards and backwards. In Vegas, we covered Shout at the Devil, you know, Post Toasty, so many great tunes. But I think the casual person, I think most people might comment in this thread, Jeff Beck, just out of hand, maybe never even having heard this record in its entirety. And I'm hoping that they'll listen to the full show and the little intel that I just shared. Because I did hear Jeff Beck, but I likewise at first misconstrued it, and I thought that maybe Tommy was influenced by Beck when it was clearly the other way around, okay? So I just think let's give credit where credit's due today. And Jeff Beck was able to take Tommy's style and take it farther because he lived longer. But this is the pioneer right here on these albums. And I know you love Deep Purple, and we don't need to mention Come Taste the Band and James Gang.
Yep, all great stuff. Great albums.
And, you know, for me, and it's the 25th anniversary of a certain Tommy Bolin box set. And although I love Beck and he's amazing and he's been able to live longer, and I love his finger picking style that he's adapted, which takes him in a totally different direction, but I still hear the Bolin in his playing. And for my money, Jeff Beck may be wired, but Tommy Bolin is the ultimate. It's the 25th anniversary of this box set. And that just came in my newsfeed yesterday because I belong to a Tommy Bolin group, the Tommy Bolin, the ultimate box set, which would be a great place for people to start, maybe who aren't familiar with Tommy's music, because it's got Spectrum stuff, it's got teaser stuff, it's got Private Eye stuff, and a whole lot more. And it's the 25th anniversary of the ultimate Tommy Bolin.
The reason why I keep looking off camera here is because I have that as well, and I'm like trying to find it. But I had it in my hutch over here.
So isn't it cool? We're celebrating Tommy's life already, and then also the 25th anniversary release of the ultimate Tommy Bolin box set.
Yep, good
so
stuff.
That's my money on the topic. Still love Jeff Beck though.
So back to the album itself. Like I said at the top of the show, pretty diverse album. There's a lot of different styles. And you know, the first time I ever heard anything off of this album, or I think the first time I ever heard any Tommy Bolin material at all, and this was, God, we're probably talking about 79 or 80 or 81, something like that. I had picked up like some kind of like heavy metal compilation album, and on it was Shake the Devil. And I remember being like a young, what's that?
That's the song we covered.
Yeah, but I remember hearing this song as like a young headbanger kid, and I remember thinking, oh, the riff is kind of cool in that song. It's kind of heavy, right? And then all of a sudden there's this like sax solo, and at the time I was like, why is there a sax solo on like a hard rock tune? And then right then I was just like, why is this song even on this album? And kind of wrote it off. Years later, of course, really got into the music and the guitar playing of Tommy Bolin. But I think that's the tune that probably most people remember from this album. But some really good tunes on here, right? You know, I think the first tune might be my favorite, but Post Toasty is also great. So, but Bustin' Out for Rosie,
love it.
That's a pretty cool tune. You know, a couple mellow tunes on here, kind of more like the folky side of Tommy, which is a little bit different.
I love it. Sweet Burgundy, Gypsy Soul, so good. I told you, Pete, the other day when we started talking about this, guys, I have a little experiment for you to try. Ladies, gentlemen, you take this album with your significant other one evening, and then take Jeff Beck Wired the other, and see which one pays more romantic dividends, because this is a really romantic LP. I mean, the music and those mellow tunes, I think, really set the tone. And for me, the songwriting, every phrase is a hook on this album, whether it's a vocal hook. His voice is amazing. That's another thing we need to talk about. The songwriting is so memorable. And then we get to the guitar solos, right?
Which are great, yeah.
So, and for me, I couldn't, you know, I've really never heard anyone really talk about any individual tracks off Wired, you know, more blow by blow, because we ended as lovers. You know, some of these tunes, I just don't think it's as memorable of a record. For me, I think this album is a timeless album that both men and ladies would enjoy.
And Tommy wrote or co-wrote all the songs on there, so a lot of credit for that. So,
and how about the musicians joining him on the record?
I did not know that Mark Stein from the Vanilla Fudge played keyboards on that album. I had no idea. I was actually looking at that this morning. I was like, oh wow, I did not realize that. Memorable guy, good Hammond organ player.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And
all right, so
I love the lyrics to Post Toasty. Forget
Yeah.
about it. We covered that back in my Dayton, Ohio cover band days. People always thought that's a killer original tune.
It is. That's
Thanks.
one of my favorite tunes on the album. It's a good one. And you mentioned Dayton, Ohio. I just wanted to say real quickly that we feel for and send prayers out to all the family and friends of the folks who were affected, the victims of the mass shooting that happened in Dayton, Ohio, as well as El Paso, Texas yesterday, which I just read about this morning. So a lot of craziness going on in the world, specifically yesterday. So our condolences to everybody who's affected by that. But anyway, just wanted to kind of say that because I know you're from Dayton area, and I'm sure anyway. Jeff Beck Wired. All right. So I think, Jeff mentioned before how probably none of the material on here is maybe as memorable as some of the songs from Blow by Blow. I think there's a couple from this album that made its way into Jeff's set list over the years on the live circuit, specifically Lead Boots and Blue Wind, I think, and Goodbye Pork Pie Hats, too. But one difference between this album and the Bolin album is that while Tommy wrote almost that album in its entirety, maybe with some co-writers, Jeff didn't write anything on this album. Okay, these are tunes, written by Max Middleton, Narada Michael Walden, who was playing drums for him at the time. He obviously did a remake of the Charlie Mingus classic Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. And Jan Hammer also wrote Blue Wind. So, basically an album put together by Jeff and the rest of the members of the band, and he just obviously adding his wonderful guitar stylings on here. Personally, I love the energy of this album. The guitar playing is off the charts. Lead Boots is a great tune. I think there's a lot of kind of funk going on this album as well. Head for Backstage Pass is a really, really good up-tempo tune. I love the grooves on this album. You got Max Middleton on keyboards, Jan Hammer on synthesizer. You've got Wilbur Bascom on bass, Narada Michael Walden on drums, Richard Bailey also on drums. Just a really strong album. Blue Wind is great on here. Great synth work from Jan Hammer. Sophie is a great tune, and Play With Me I love as well. So, I don't know. For me, I dig both albums quite a bit. Unlike Jeff, I'm going to lean to Jeff on this one. So my vote goes for Wired. You know what it is, too? I've been listening to Wired for a long, long time, a lot longer than I've been grooving to this album. And while I love the Bolin album, I'm going to give a slight win to Jeff Beck on this one. Just because, I would say probably these days I probably listen to Tommy Bolin's music a little bit more than Jeff Beck's music, but there are certain Jeff Beck albums that are pretty treasured to me. That's one of them. So, but like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. So go ahead, give your rebuttal to that.
I'm more of a Blow by Blow Jeff Beck.
Yeah, that's a great
album, and I dig some of his newer albums. I enjoy even more than Wired. The Tommy Bolin stuff is just desert island material for me. These are desert island albums. Again, I have the nostalgia with these albums. It takes me back to my first guitar teacher, my first cover songs. I learned how to play guitar off these records. And again, I had it twisted too. I thought that Tommy was influenced by Jeff at first, but I'm glad we cleared that up today. And I'd just like to say this is just the cool, who's cooler than that? Not many.
So would you say, all right, so let's do a little what if here. So, we obviously know that Jeff Beck was recording and touring way before when Tommy was still, a young kid. And Jeff, Jeff's style of guitar playing has changed over the years and morphed over the years. So if there was no Tommy Bolin, so where would Jeff Beck have gone, like in the mid-'70s, had he not got that little spark of influence to change direction from a Tommy Bolin? Because he was doing, those first couple Jeff Beck group albums are fantastic, but that's like late '60s, early '70s blues rock, right? That's kind of like the Jeff Beck Truth band with Rod Stewart, and then he did the band with Cozy Powell, and kind of a little bit of that, those jazzier leanings were popping into his music at that time, but it wasn't until Blow by Blow that he did a complete about face, and we discussed why. So if there was no Tommy Bolin to kind of put that spark in him, where do you think he would have gone throughout the rest of the decade? It's kind of like an interesting thing to kind of pose there.
And if Tommy would have lived on, where would he have gone? Those
Well,
are two.
yeah,
Those are three players that I really always wonder that. You know, Randy Rhoads, of course. What could have been Tommy Bolin, and James Honeymoon Scott from the Pretenders, who was another amazing guitar player we lost too soon. So I know they were great friends. I'm going to post on the Music Without Boundaries Facebook, because we'll be talking about Tommy on the show tomorrow night on Tuesday. I got a really charming picture of Jeff and Tommy together backstage after Tommy's last show when he was opening for Jeff Beck on the tour. And you can see they love each other. And Jeff has a beautiful quote about Tommy, that he was just really sensitive and cool person. So I think there's no war here. I think they had a mutual love for each other, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say Bolin and Beck both win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think all the fans win too, because like I said, these are both two great albums. And, you know, if there are folks out there who have not listened to Private Eyes, now's a perfect time to do so, because it's a really cool album. I think, you know, out of the two solo albums he released, I think Teaser gets more of the kind of the rub from the casual fan, but I think Private Eyes is, would you say, is equally as good? They're both really good albums, I think.
Equally as good. Actually, Teaser is going to give you a little bit more of that Jeff Beck. There's a little more instrumental vibes than just Marching Powder off Teaser. If you just want to go listen to the first Tommy Bolin track, go put on Marching Powder, and you'll hear where it all began.
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
And you can hear in that tune, you can hear, you know, if I was Jeff Beck or any other guitar player and I heard Bolin at that time, I'd be copping his vibe too.
Yep, yep. Yes,
I mean, I did. I figured so many of his licks out. I know it's part of my style. I hear some Tommy Bolin on Monsoon, so it's all in there. And it's just, this show's been a great format, and it's all in good fun. We love both players. But I think it's really great because Tommy isn't around anymore, that we were able to get, you know, maybe some new intel, because that's like kind of music history changing knowledge we just dropped here today. Because I'd say probably everyone, and again, most people would probably just comment Jeff Beck out of hand. But if you investigate a little earlier, I think you'll find that if you ask Jeff Beck, he'd probably pick Tommy Bolin.
Probably. And even though he left us way too soon, I think Tommy left behind a pretty rich discography of recorded material, whether it be his two solo albums, the wealth of, like, you know, semi-bootleg albums, live albums that have come out, you know, which are all fantastic. The great album with Deep Purple, Come Taste the Band, which we mentioned before, the two albums he did with the James Gang, which I think are great. And then his appearance with Billy Cobham, as well as his appearance on Alphonse Mouzon's album as well.
I love the Alphonse Mouzon stuff. If people love the Billy Cobham stuff, you got to go hear the Alphonse Mouzon.
Yeah, it's great. So, you know, and then he did the stuff with Zephyr. So, I mean, there's plenty. And let's not forget
Energy.
Yes. And his guitar solos on that first Moxie album, which are dynamite. Right. He was not a member of the band, but he just happened to be in the studio next door or whatever. And they were having an issue with their lead guitar player. They asked him to come in and add some guitar solos to the album, and boom, you know, so a lot of good Bolin stuff out there and a lot of great Beck stuff out there. So two wonderful musicians.
Talk about the album Warren Haynes did.
That is true. Yeah. Haynes is a big Tommy fan.
He did an album with all guitar players paying tribute to Tommy. Brad Whitford's on there, Steve Morse, Warren Haynes, of course. Definitely check that album out. It's really, really cool interpretations of Tommy's music. And I believe the original tracks are from Tommy's master tapes. So they're actually jamming with Tommy, if I don't remember.
I believe that is the case. Yep, exactly. So pretty cool.
How cool is that?
Yeah. I'd forgotten all about that album. I remember when that came out, that was kind of a big deal. So Very cool.
We got that in there today. Good deal. Good news.
Exactly. So there you have it. So a little bit of discussion about two really cool albums by two great guitar players. Like I said, there's no right or wrong here. Everybody likes what they like, but I think we all can agree that there's a lot to love on both of these albums. And whether you prefer Private Eyes or Wired, that's either way is cool. They're both fantastic. So Jeff, thanks for being on the show once again. We look forward to having you back. Oh, we got Tallulah in the house.
Well, I think we should tell them about the next Music Without Boundaries because you're co-hosting. I just want to say Tallulah has to put in a vote also for Wild Dogs and Tommy Bolin. That's another great Tommy Bolin tune. And I get that's a good segue into our show tomorrow night, right, Pete?
That is correct. That is correct. So tomorrow night, Jeff is having me back on Music Without Boundaries again. How many? There's what, 2 weeks in a row?
Wait, is this posting today?
No,
it's going to be Tuesday night, or is it posting
Tuesday night? Yeah, all right, exactly. So what did I say? All right, so yeah, this is going to be airing Monday morning. So so Tuesday night live, I'll be on Music Without Boundaries once again. Jeff and I are doing a tribute show to the greatness that is Pink Floyd's wonderful album Animals. So, Jeff, we're going to be playing the album in its entirety and then just kind of talking about it and why it's
something we can both agree on 100%.
Yep.
Our favorite Floyd is Animals Floyd.
So now that we're talking about that, I was thinking about this all day yesterday. So I was out by the pool yesterday and listening to Animals, just kind of getting my mind ready for the Music Without Boundaries show, and thinking about how about a month ago I did a Classic Album War show where I had Animals going up against Going for the One by Yes. And on the show, I picked the Yes album. And I think ever since that day, I've been thinking, and again, it doesn't really matter, but ever since that day, I've been thinking, you know what? I think I made the wrong choice there. As much as I love Going for the One by Yes, since then I've listened to Animals a lot, okay, because I knew we've been talking about doing this, and I'm like, hey, you know what? If I were to change that, because I normally don't go back on what I do on these shows, but I would probably go back and switch that around. Because I think maybe, probably deep down inside, I just realized that I probably like Animals a bit better than Going for the One, as much as I love that album. But it's, Animals is damn near perfect, right? I mean, that's a pretty unique album. So I've said it here, folks. I'm going back on my choice from that Classic Album War show. I will flip that around. Animals is your winner against Going for the One.
And watch out, people. When we come back to do the sequel to this show, when we put Tommy Bolin teaser up against some album, Pete's going to go, I've had some time to think since that Jeff Beck, Tommy Bolin show we did together. And I'm going to have to change. I got to go with Private Eyes on this now.
We shall see. I don't know. Wired is pretty wired into my psyche, so I don't know. But anyway, so thanks again, guys. Thanks again to Jeff and to Tallulah for appearing on Sea of Tranquility here. We will be seeing Jeff back on again soon. Generally, how it works for these Classic Album Wars is I tell Jeff each week, right, here's the ones I'm thinking of doing. You let me know which one you want to appear on. So that generally he's been picking one, but the other day he's like, it's Bolin's birthday. We got to do a Bolin show where one of his albums against something else. I'm like, all right, there we go. Done.
You got crafty on me and pulled out the back. Man, when I saw that when you mailed that to me, I was like, oh. I told you, Dammy, why you do this to me?
All right, so Jeff, real quick, tell everybody where they can find you here on the internet.
Oh, just about everywhere. How about reverbnation.com/Guitar Ninja? The radio show. You're going to want to catch Pete Pardo and I Tuesday evening. It's 7:11 Eastern Standard Time. 4:11 on the West Coast, whatever time it is, wherever you are on the planet, you can tune in at jeffyoungjams.com, right? And Twitter, Jeff Scott Young, Instagram, Flying V4Me, and probably the youtube.com/JeffYoungTube to see some music stuff, some originals, covers. We even had Shake the Devil up there for a while. I kind of moved stuff around, but
cool.
I'll post that back up again. I think I'm going to record that one for reals on an upcoming JY outing.
Sounds good.
Love it so much.
Can't wait to hear it.
But thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for listening and having fun with us today. We love these, and I look forward to coming back again soon.
And we will have you soon.
Clipboard in hand.
And we will have Jeff back on soon. So everybody, in the meantime, don't forget to check out Music Without Boundaries this coming Tuesday night, tomorrow night, jeffyoungjams.com. Make sure you go onto our Facebook page today and vote for this particular classic album war, either Tommy or Jeff. And visit us every day on Facebook for more of these polls, and every morning here with videos relating to the polls, Classic Album Wars. So we'll see you again real soon, guys. www.seatranquility.org. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.